Quantum Conversations, your portal to the inner realms. Access infinite possibilities, infinite mastery, and infinite love. Mind-expanding, heart-opening conversations with some of the greatest spiritual teachers, luminaries, and healers of today's world. Usher in new earth by living in your sacred heart. Quantum Conversations is brought to you by AcousticHealth.com, home of music from the universe, online healing retreats, and this program. Claim your free registration to daily shows at AcousticHealth.com. AcousticHealth.com, your portal to the inner realms. Our program starts shortly. Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. We are back with the Master Christof Melchizedek, and we are talking about the new Earth templates and the great changes that are coming, including a new holographic field of the Homo Divinus, which is the next root race. We're going to get deep into that conversation. Let's welcome back Christof Melchizedek to Quantum Conversations. Thanks so much for joining us once again, Christof.
Oh, Lauren, you're most welcome. It's a pleasure to be with you here again in the space and with your listeners. It's always a pleasure sharing some of the things that we're uncovering with all those that are interested.
And uncovering some things you are, and this is going to be another fascinating conversation, also a continuation of our original conversation. That replay can be found on this webpage. Before we start there, we are joining you in the evening here in the UK, and you are on the precipice of welcoming a new soul to planet Earth. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yes, we're here in Ibiza, just not far from the UK. So which is off the coast of Spain, and we are patiently waiting. It'll be coming sometime in these next days. We believe it's a daughter. We've had no medical tests or doctor visits, so we're just we're communicating with the soul as she presents herself as a female, and we are in the space of the birthing portal, going to be welcoming and integrating this new soul into Earth.
Well, everyone listening is really holding that space with you, and we'll be thinking about that. Take a moment and talk about the new souls coming through the Earth and really what you're doing in particular to welcome this soul.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question, Lauren. I'm very happy you asked it because I feel it's such a beautiful topic. This is our second baby, and all of those of you who are parents recognize it's such an initiation. And there's actually the birth of two new beings. There's the, of course, birth of the new soul and baby that comes in, and there's the birth of parents. You transition into this new phase of your life, becoming a parent, and of course it does herald a complete change in the way that you're operating. But I would love to speak a little moment about what I've come to directly know and understand through my experience as a parent, and how we've integrated our first baby and how we're going to integrate this next one, because of course they're coming in as a high being, a high soul. These because the Earth's vibration is rising in consciousness, and now where Earth's consciousness is stationed in the higher dimensions, it's stabilizing between dimension 4 and 5 right now in the consciousness field known as Tara. And as such, because we've made these dimensional band leaps, there is abilities now for our souls from higher dimensions to start coming into the planet, which of course wasn't the case, say, 20 years ago. So we do have these new beings that are coming in that are sensitive, that are more highly and spiritually evolved in their consciousness. And so they're coming from a frequency band that is incredibly fast, which doesn't know the density, the duality, and many of the other heaviness and distortions that we experience here in the 3 and 4D. So in order to integrate this, there's a number of ways that a new parent can do so. And if you are an expecting mother and father or have young children, I'm just going to spend a few minutes sharing what I've come to learn. Integrating a new soul, you want to open the sacred space. We're having our next baby as the first in the sacred comfort of our home, where we can set up beautiful energy fields. But one of the templates that you can investigate on the internet through the incredible work of a woman named Robin Lynn is the lotus birth. And the lotus birth is a method where after the birth comes through and the child emerges into the world, a few seconds or minutes later the placenta arrives. And the placenta is actually the organic tree of life, and contains all the frequencies and all the energies still permeating very heavily in it. It's much more than also the nutrients and life support for the child. Of course, it was their energetical twin for 9 months in the womb, providing all the nutrients it needed to grow and evolve. So in the modern medical world, of course, there's quite a soon cutting of the cord, and this is the child's first trauma, this first abandonment, this first wounding of separation happens as the umbilical cord gets cut. So under the lotus template, what you do is you don't cut the umbilical cord at all, and you leave it attached to the placenta, so that for several days, anywhere between 3 days up to 10 days, the baby is still actually physically connected to the placenta. Wow. And then after a few days, the baby will begin to naturally separate themselves and use their little feet and hands to start pulling at the umbilical cord, and then the umbilical cord begins to harden, and it hardens, and then it just snaps away. And in the case of Noah, our first son, it took 5 days. Now, what was interesting was that Akasha, who, of course, you interview on your show, and people know he's got quite incredible vision, it wasn't just the physical transfer of all the nutrients. He was physically seeing all these incredible auroric and platinum frequencies that were being shared between the placenta 3 days later and the baby. And so what happens is that there's a much bigger integration of all that energy, and the baby feels more integrated in their physical vessel. It's not such a shock coming in. And then, to help with this integration process, this first 12 months is when this first energy center, the first chakra, is being developed, and many of these imprintings and wounds can happen in that first energy center when the baby is separated from the mother and father. So I do encourage all new mothers and fathers to wear their new baby a lot in a sling on their chest and belly, and to have as much as possible wearing the baby on that sling and co-sleeping. We're big fans and advocates of co-sleeping, where the baby sleeps with the mother and father in your energy field.
Yes.
And, we always, if Noah cries, we'll always attend to him so that he always knows we're there, so he doesn't feel this abandonment and wounding of separation from sleeping in a separate room or cot and being put into a schedule or crying to sleep. We don't do any of that. It was being very attentive. And when this style of parenting in the early years is called attachment parenting, and you can research this on the internet. It is more labor intensive, and you do have to be more attentive, but it does set you up down the track to have much more integrated, emotionally secure children who you have a bigger chance of influencing as they get older, because you have this good emotional rapport and bond due to this time on you and time sleeping with you and this attachment parenting style. So in our experience, that was the best way to integrate these high beings that are coming in from these higher dimensional realms and make them feel safe and secure in their physical bodies and vessels as they start navigating and finding their way through this dimension that we live in. So I hope that gives a little direction for new parents coming in. And the name was Lotus Birth, and Robin Lim is the lady you can check out. Her book, The Forgotten Chakra, is a wonderful book all about this Lotus Birth. And attachment parenting is the style that I feel is the best way of integrating these souls in, if you want to research this further, if you're listening.
How wonderful when we have a generation of children that are loved and nurtured in such a way, really, really giving them quite a head start. Thank you so much, Christof, for being that new earth way of living, bringing forth attachment parenting in your own life. And it's so beautiful because those babies, those beings need to be in our energy field. Even science is proving this. So I love that. Okay. Co-sleeping with the baby. Mm-hmm.
Noah's 19 months, and he's still, it's a beautiful experience, co-sleeping with your child, and, and as long as he wants to, he's always going to be welcome.
It's so beautiful. Well, we are going to be interested in that news, and we certainly will be sending you our positive vibes as you welcome in this new family member.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and I'll drop you a message when she arrives. How's that?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We'll share that with our listeners too. Okay, now onward to our show. We left off where we were learning about this new template, this new morphogenetic field that's coming into Earth. It's a new grid. And that means the flower of life, the seed of life, which was left on our planet really as an awakening beacon for so many to go into the knowledge of this. But this has updated. Everything is updated. And now it's the new Crysto Spiral. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I'll start with, the technology, of course, of the flower of life, which I believe we all love. I mean, it's been a wonderful geometry. It has had a closed-loop architecture. And what this means is that it has no relationship to its center, so that it does not have a eternally sustained light. It does not live on forever. It has a natural life and birth and death cycle, and is represented by the mathematical equation of the Fibonacci sequence, where the mathematics of the flower of life, which is actually an encrypted reverse code, which actually begins with a phase-locked Trinity symbol, which phase locks it down into a Vesica Pisces. The mathematics of the flower of life, in accordance with the flower of life and the unfolding of the Fibonacci, goes in the mathematical sequence of 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 35, etc., etc. And we get those numbers by adding up the two previous numbers to get the next number. For example, 1 and 1 equals 2. And then the next number in the sequence is 3. So then we go to the previous two numbers and we go 1, 2, and 3. Then the next number in the sequence is 5, and we add 2 and 3 together, which gets 5. So how this works is that it's a consumption model, where 1 eats 1 to become 2, then 2 devours 3 to become 5, and then what happens is that 3 consumes 5 to become 8, and 5 consumes 8 to become 13, and 8 consumes 13 to become 21. So there's this energetic pull of the previous geometry and number to collect the next number. And so when you actually get to see that mathematical sequence unfolding, we do see that as not having a relationship with the center. If you do look at the Fibonacci spiral, it's constantly going outward, outward, outward. And so what's happened is that this hijacked Vesica Pisces architecture has kept the binary code locked down in the planet, so that the actual source field code, which is a Trinity wave, would not be accessible. And these Metatronic type spirals have locked down the grids over time, and it's created a lot of reversals in the energetic frequency of many of the Earth grids. Now, in contrast, you mentioned the Christic Spiral, which is absolutely correct. The Christic Architecture does have a relationship with its center, and it's always sustaining, and the mathematics of this geometry is represented also by the zero. So it includes the zero in the mathematical sequence, meaning it has a relationship with source, with center. And the mathematical values of this particular geometry go 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. And it does so through doubling each numerical value. So what happens is that each of these numerical values is derived through returning to 0 and then adding all the numbers together again to get the next highest value in its sequence. So it's kind of like going into expansion, then going into contraction all the way back to source, and then going back out into expansion slightly further again. So let's go through and do the maths on this. We start with 0, and then we go to 1. Then we go back to 0, and we go 0, 1, 1 gives us 2. And then we go back to 0, and we go 1, 1, 2, which gives us 4. And we go back to 0, and we go 1, 1, 2, 4 gives us 8. And we go back to 0, and we go 1, 1, 2, 4, 8 gives us 16. And so on. We go back to 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 gives us 32. So as we can see with the mathematics of this geometry is that it's always got a relationship with a 0 point, with a source, with unity intelligence. And these frequencies are in this constant exchange loop, this feedback loop, exchanging with the eternally sustained light and the eternally sustained source supply. And this exchange head with source is the principle of the Christos, the Christic energy that is now what we are seeing represented coming down to our earth is the externalization of the Christ. And what happens is that the Christic spiral expands by every 45 degrees, and what it does is it goes through this rotation. And this rotation derives its height to width ratio from the 12-tree grid. And so this crystal spiral is a very smooth, very geometrically expanding spiral that has the same ratios at every 90-degree turn as it doubles its size. Now, this geometry is the geometry upon which the eternally sustained light of the Creator can be built from, and what we'll be seeing is that this new root race, this Homo Divinus, the beings there who will be coming online to this frequency, and there will be beings who are physically embodied here on the planet now, who will be in these years ahead making the shift and transition, where currently humanity's architecture is governed by the Fibonacci sequence, which supplies the geometry for cell division and how the cells multiply, will be shifting over to this more Christic spiral geometry. And indeed, many of the Earth grids will starting to be planted with this Christic spiral geometry and what we call a Triwave code, or this Triwave frequency, a Triwave geometry. And indeed, the Triwave geometry is this eternally sustained life grid, and it sort of is like this fountain of youth because it kind of represents the father, the mother, and the child. And of course, in religion, we saw this get hijacked into the masculine principle of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, the true Christic version of the Trinity wave is the father, the mother, and the androgynous child. And this geometry, which you've mentioned today, is the one that is starting to going to be built out on our planet, and indeed starting to be articulated into the morphogenic fields of those beings who are going to start this transition into the Homo Divinus, creating a biological immortality template because of this eternally sustained light of the Creator flowing through them, having a relationship with Source, and creating a crystalline body, which means we're starting to see the biological death of the carbon blueprint and more into the silicon blueprint, which is actually now starting to materialize in more highly evolved beings physically incarnated on the planet. We're starting to see, as we scan people, not so many at the moment, but it's going to come greater numbers. But some beings are starting to have some cells that are crystalline in nature versus the carbon structure. So that's kind of what's going on in relationship to the geometry that you mentioned and how it has a relationship with the new root race, the Homo Divinus, that you also mentioned.
Wow, so fascinating. All right, because yeah, so you must be psychic as well, because as you were speaking, I had questions come up that you definitely answered. I was going to say, with the Fibonacci spiral and the mathematical sequence, that is a consumptive model. And you mentioned it's got metatronic spirals that lock the grid. But I also was thinking, isn't this related to nature? And you did answer that question, that we're going through this shift, that yes, nature does work that way right now, but we will be shifting, and how beautiful that we're doing it with our physical body. So I was also writing, is this related to the crystalline body? And you said that yes, we are now starting to see some people having cells that are crystalline. Let's talk about what's going on outside of us right now, because this is extremely important. We are at a point in time where we could get distracted rather easily by what's going on in the world as this old system is collapsing. So can you share what we can do? Because you are definitely focused on this. You don't give your power away to that fear of world leaders or anything. Do you want to talk about that, what our roles are, how we can truly stay focused?
Absolutely. You know, we are transitioning out of the old, and just to finish the loop on this conversation with the Fibonacci sequence being involved in nature, yes, it has been involved in nature, and it has been absolutely necessary. It hasn't been a bad thing because it's created evolution. You know, without these birth and death cycles, which have been governing the plant and animal kingdom, we wouldn't have biological evolution. So it has been a necessary component, but what we're seeing now, because of this Christic server of a new hosting frequency that is hosting the consciousness of our whole universal matrix, this is the externalization of the Christic frequency starting to come into the planet. So what we're seeing is this kind of more movement now into this more eternal kind of energy, which we're going to be sustained and hosted by. So this is this transition. It's all part of the great evolutionary sequence that is coming through. So it's not to say that the Fibonacci and the Flower of Life have been bad. They haven't been bad at all. It's just, evolution. We're evolving into higher geometries and higher form-holding templates that are more Christic in nature than our previous ones we've been exposed to. So that's my stance on that. Now, coming back to your question, Lauren. Now, just quickly remind me, what was the direction we're going here on this next question?
This next question is to really, truly stand in our power, not to move into fear at any point. And this is a real challenge for light workers. And so please address that.
Yes. Well, given I know on the various interviews that I've been having, I get asked this quite a bit lately about, this transition of leadership in America and how people are coming up in arms and are starting to, become concerned, worried, and absolutely, this is absolutely giving power away when you feel that some savior who is going to be a leader is going to suddenly blow the trumpets and everything's going to start changing. Change is going to happen at a family and the community level. And what we're looking for here in the evolution of our species and this changing of what's going on in terms of the systems dropping away is going to come only through the ascent of the family. And the central piece of the community needs to come back to the family and putting family values first and community values and starting at grassroots level and starting to look after each other. First in your family and then in your wider community and then a little bit wider in your city, and so it goes on and so forth. We can't expect we enter into victim consciousness if we're waiting for a savior to come and rescue the situation and waiting for a leader to come and suddenly make changes and make differences. No matter the climate and the economic condition or the societal condition, you can always thrive. You see, especially when you start cultivating your energetic sense that is internalized, not externalized. So I feel it's important for people that they start to do more of the inner work and build up those frequencies of love, joy, and appreciation for what you do have. The fact that you have health in your physical vessel, that you have loved ones around you, that you have shelter, that you have food on your table. These are things to be incredibly grateful for, and to build up these energies and frequencies within and celebrate what we have rather than what we do not have. Yes, a number of changes need to take place, but the governments aren't going to do this for us. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones who are going to stand up and make a difference. And I will say this for this administration. This administration is going to accelerate the rise of people to get together and start standing up for what is right. People, are a little bit pissed off out there, and we're already seeing people banding together and rising up in their consciousness to make a stand for what they feel is right and just. And so while things might get bumpy along the way, it is accelerating some action into communities and groups of people to stand up for what they believe in. And there's no power greater than a unified consciousness of people coming together around the principles that are going to align ourselves with the more Christic nature of the energy coming to our planet. Unconditional love, cooperation, these types of energy that we begin cultivating inside of ourselves. There are certain virtues that you begin to cultivate inside yourself, and these virtues then start to spill over into how you are, day to day in life, which become incredibly important. If you start able to start cultivating these virtues that are going to stand with you. For example, the virtues of truth, the virtues of service to others, humility, acceptance. These types of things, are so important to begin embodying ourselves on a daily basis, so that we can live in alignment with these principles. Selflessness. We can be in divine expression of our truth, and to be in the virtue of sovereignty. And what we mean by sovereignty is not giving our power away to any external authority or power, including in our relationships, to be sovereign in our relationship, to be sovereign in our relationship to an organization and authority, to be spiritually sovereign. So as you start to work on your consciousness, start to tune into your sense of sovereignty and know that all the love that you have and need is within inside of yourself. And when you fill yourself up with this, you can come together in relationship with another sovereign being, not from a place of codependence, where you set up this expectation and then disappointment and blame starts getting played out because of this fact that your energy, you don't feel you're getting love from yourself and from source. You have to get it from another and end up siphoning energy from others around you, or ending up getting caught in victim consciousness and blaming the governments for your situation. It's about taking personal responsibility for our sovereignty, of our love and of our spirituality, and then walking our life path with purpose. And as you start to piece together your passions, your purpose, and your profession, you'll start to make a difference with the divine skills you've been granted as you walk this path. And then you start making a difference in the community around you. And soon enough, we start to see families change, communities change, and soon enough, the world begins changing in a few short years.
Thank you for that comforting description, and thank you. Really beautiful. Beautiful reminders and a beautiful message, very comforting. Okay, can you talk about this Triveca frequency, this new frequency coming in this new root race, and the Triwave Geometry?
Absolutely. So currently on the planet, what's been happening is that people have been aware of the flower of life, which has been a geometric pattern that has been, sending frequency out throughout the planet. And this has been the a bywave frequency, which has been this Vesica Piscis, which was implanted into humanity and our Earth by what we shall call suppressor beings and suppressor consciousness fields, who locked down the geometries on the Earth grids by locking this down into a Vesica Piscis harness. What's happening at the moment is with this Christic server that is starting to broadcast frequencies into this unified source field which we live in, this matrix that we live in, this tri-frequency, this tri-wave frequency is a tri-wave unity open loop system that is broadcasting a frequency band of unity intelligence. And this is unity intelligence is actually the geometry of a tri-wave. And these can also be thought of, I guess, as a sound wave. And these are three sound wave tones. When they're merged into energetic balance, they become one component linked into this eternal source supply. Because of course sound comes before vibration and light and geometry. So this principle of this unity field is starting to be broadcast now from the server all the way through into our planet and into our planetary grids. Before the fall of Atlantis, there was a large tri-wave field frequency broadcasted out throughout our planet around this time. And what happened when the grids blew and everything got locked down, the suppressor beings came and locked down that geometry, which is currently locked down under the Great Pyramid of Giza. So this is like a major sleeping giant for the accelerated evolution of our species. And indeed, later this year, we're taking a grouping to Egypt in August to do some work on this tri-wave geometry, which is hosted on our planet under the Pyramid of Giza, which is sleeping, and we're looking forward to supporting the Guardians and waking this geometry up. We've got a large engine on Earth broadcasting this tri-wave geometry, which is this, Christic, which is the capacity of this Christic frequency, which is going to be broadcasting out across the planet. So there's a lot of positive things that are happening, on our planet right now that is creating quite an accelerated change. I mean, we were doing a transmission recently, and we got some information that, currently the AI influences the artificial intelligences in the grids, which are influencing our Earth, as it sits at 26%. Which this has been a massive improvement, because only 2 years ago the AI influences on the Earth grids were in the 80 percentile range. So in just 2 years, the AI influences on the energetic Earth grids have jumped from 80% to 26% as of yesterday. So this is a major boost for all the light workers out there who have been doing work and who are working against the archons and working against other suppressor consciousness fields which are setting up these artificial intelligence broadcasting stations. Well, these are just being ripped out at the moment, and certainly those beings who have managed to migrate their consciousness across to the Christic server and are broadcasting their geometries as tri-wave frequencies. Well, once you're on the Christic server, the frequency that comes out of you is just going to rip apart AI. And so more and more light workers who are taking their spiritual evolution seriously are making the migration across to this. And the work is simply just by walking across the grid lines, the frequency coming from their field is overwriting the artificial intelligence. So it's an amazing acceleration that is happening on our planet, and it's going to keep coming. I mean, we're guaranteed ascension on this planet now since end of 2012, start of 2013. So this is just going to keep happening, and the suppressive consciousness beings and artificial intelligence fields and the archons are sort of trying to dig their claws into the last places where they can hold this, reversed frequencies in the Earth grids before they're all going to be just, I imagine, booted out of their holding points as the Earth is moving up to these higher dimensional harmonics.
All right, so migrating our consciousness to the Christic server, those who take our spiritual evolution seriously, that's how we do it, anchoring into these higher grids. Is that by...
Well,
Go ahead.
There's sort of what we've been tracking, and this is just through our observations of people that we've been mentoring and supporting through this process, is that, there is a process that goes on. You need to have your consciousness operating at at least monadic and, most likely avatar consciousness level. And what we mean by that is that you've gone through soul absorption. Your consciousness is stationed at the monadic level. This is, for those of you new to this term, just means a much larger consciousness field and is represented in your DNA template by having at least strands 7, 8, and 9 activated so that you can be receiving dimensions 7, 8, and 9 of consciousness. And you're living by many of these principles that are sort of more unity-based, and you're seeing rather than life as an individual I, more of a we, and you're operating from a we consciousness field. And ultimately, we see most people jump across from avatar consciousness, where they've embodied strands 10, 11, 12, and their consciousness is stationed at their avatar level. And what happens is that a Christic jewel from the Christic server that is filled with auroric type frequencies, which is the hosting frequency, starts to come down and populate into people's spiritual high heart, which is that the high heart is located just above the heart chakra. And it's like this kind of little atom, like a little atom from the Christic server. And this, almost like Christic jewel, we call it, or permanent seed atom, populates in their high heart. And once that happens, over 21 days, this frequency begins to build in someone's bioenergy field and starts to anchor in if they keep true according to the Christic principles, and they don't go backwards with, distortions and negative behaviors. They hold that frequency, and then literally they come offline on the Melchizedek system, which our system has used to be hosted under the Melchizedek logos, and now it's transitioned into this Christic server frequency. And once you've got this permanent seed atom and you've anchored it in after 21 days, it's like you literally go off the radar on the Melchizedek hosting system and you're on the Christic server. And what happens then in your life is that everything speeds up. Literally, you start becoming more crystalline. Your intentions begin manifesting faster, and the speed of which life comes towards you increases, which is wonderful if you've found your purpose and mission, because it starts accelerating towards you. However, if you of course drop into discordant worries and thoughts, of course you're going to manifest that faster in your life too. So it does come with responsibility. So this whole transitioning of people's consciousness, for those of you that are taking your spiritual growth seriously, that is a major marker to activate your monadic and ultimately avatar consciousness, and then move across to the Christic server as your hosting system. It's literally like, moving from perhaps having a small server at home, which is hosting your websites, and then deciding you're going to migrate across to maybe the Google or Amazon servers, which are these enormous, machines and rooms that have got incredible processing speeds compared to the small processor you have at home. So everything on your website begins functioning smoother, faster, cleaner. And that's what happens to your consciousness in your life when you make that migration across to the Christic server. And, light workers, of course, who are on the path, this is this one of these great achievements of your spiritual evolution, is to get across onto this new server. And once you do, then everything begins accelerating in life, and you can be of greater service and greater impact in the world. And simply by holding these frequencies in your field, walking across the earth, you're overwriting, the biowave influences and the flower of life influences and the AI influences. Automatically, your frequency is just overwriting everything. It's like you've got the antivirus code to the suppressive consciousness and the artificial intelligence that's been keeping our consciousness of our planet suppressed.
My goodness, I know this is really the purpose for everyone listening. We really, truly want to work on this and migrate the consciousness over. Okay, so thank you for the explanation of the monadic and the avatar level. And those were strands of DNA that you mentioned, like 7, 8, 9 strands of consciousness?
So how this works is that each DNA strand is like a gateway to that dimension of consciousness. So if you don't have that DNA strand active, your cells won't be receiving frequency from that dimensional band of, say, for example, strand 7 is the gateway to dimension 7. So if you don't have strand 7 activated, you're not receiving the energy current from dimension 7. So you don't even have access to it. And what that would mean, for example, is that you might have soul intelligence driving your life, where you recognize that you have a consciousness that lives on after your physical body dies, but you're still more at the state of being individuated. You still see yourselves as having a separate consciousness from others around you. To get up to monadic consciousness, you'd have to have strands, 7, 8, and 9 active, and you have to have gone through soul absorption, where the intermediary of the soul absorbs up into the monad, and rather than having this enormous frequency being filtered by the soul, there's no soul to filter it, because you're operating from monadic consciousness, which is a grouping of souls which are operating your life from. So it's a much bigger field and stream of consciousness which is flowing through your hologram. So part of this pathway of spiritual evolution is, rewiring and activating your DNA template, overcoming imprinted programming, and these programs can be held in your ancestral templates, they can be held in your past life templates, future lives, they can be held at soul level, there could be distortions and contracts. So when you're working on your consciousness, it's much more than just your physical vessel. You have to work on the totality of your consciousness, which for many people is a revelation when you find this out, because suddenly it's not just about, fixing up some of your mummy and daddy issues that you had growing up. You have to clean up your ancestral templates 21 generations back, and you have to clean up your past life karma and a whole bunch of things that could be capping you and keeping you at a ceiling. So this pathway of spiritual evolution to embody your monadic and avatar consciousness, so you can have an opportunity to jump across to this new Christic server and have this Christic frequency stream through you, accelerate your life, does come with this understanding of, how your consciousness field works, how your DNA template works, and how you need to work on yourself to make significant changes and breakthroughs, so you can break through to that next level of your life, which is always going to be based around how much consciousness your hologram is hosting and holding. It's all about that. It's not so much about learning a fancy marketing technique to get more clients because you're a light worker and want to do more healing. It's simply about raising your vibration and expanding your consciousness, and then everything else will just come as people begin to be attracted by your consciousness field, the light that you hold, the wisdom that you hold from having gone through this process.
To be taken very seriously. And you mentioned, when the light from the Christic server comes in through the high heart and it builds in the energy field, you said living by the Christic principles. Would that also assist us in making that transition to really truly embody these Christic principles? And that would be going against pretty much everything that we have in our current life: competition, judgment. This is why it's so important to transcend these behaviors, right? So talk a little bit about more of these Christic principles, and then the negative behaviors. Also, do we still eat meat? Things like this.
Yes, these are great questions. So when we talk about Christic principles, we're talking about, behaviors that are in alignment with the operational parameters that this sort of source matrix is operating under, which is unconditional love, which is cooperation, which is the law of one. So it's all about stepping into this place of selfless service. It's really all about, stepping into being selfless. It's stepping into, connecting with almost your higher self, embodying the virtue of love. As you love all beings and all people, and you operate with universal truth, and you give unconditionally to all beings, you're operating with humility, you're operating with non-attachment, acceptance, selflessness, divine expression. These types of energies, sovereignty, divine will, and you start to use your vehicle and your consciousness as an unimpeded vehicle for source streaming through you. Your personality no longer governs your decision making. You're literally giving yourself completely over to the divine to use you as an instrument for the unfolding of the divine plan. That's, you start operating and activating your avatar world service contract. And, life gets quite exciting when you do that. I mean, for example, I remember I was in going through a process because, to get to these levels, we suddenly didn't just wake up and achieved it. We had to go through all the human dramas and stories and negative behaviors. I had alcoholism in my father's line and my mother's line, and I was, in my younger days drinking a lot. And I could tell that if I wanted to fulfill my potential, I simply had to let go of this negative behavior, which was creating some disruptions in my life. And I remember doing, as part of my shamanic journey as apprentices and all of these practices I was involved in, I was involved in an iboga circle. And I for 2 years was traveling Europe doing incredible iboga sessions for people from all around Europe, doing all sorts of incredible types of challenges they were overcoming. But for myself, I remember overcoming alcoholism with this medicine iboga, and very clearly it came to me from my higher self, which was almost like Source or God speaking to me directly. It said, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was, if you give up the alcohol and believe in me, I'll give you a life you won't believe. And then I ran to the bathroom and did 2 massive purges and purged out the alcoholism in my father's line and the imprinting and the alcoholism in my mother's line. And then since that day I didn't drink again, because the motivation of wanting to be of bigger service overrode the desire for the lower behavior. So as you're stepping up to the higher frequencies, what will happen is that your choices of lifestyle will begin changing and adjusting. And, I'll freely admit, I was heavily, into meat eating for a long time. And it took me to get to a certain level of consciousness before I was ready to let that go. And now I no longer eat meat because of the vibration of it and the density of it. The meats get slaughtered in the slaughterhouses, and the meat does contain a lot of fear, and this fear gets trapped into the meat, and then we eat that meat and it lowers our vibration. We also take on that karma, and also it's very heavy for the digestive system. So I choose to eat mainly a plant-based diet, which is adding, biophotonic light fields and information to my system, to my hologram. So, when you're making decisions and choices to move forward, what you would like to do is probably just take an honest checklist of whereabouts is the lowest frequency behavior playing out in your life right now. Is there an addiction going on? Is it coffee? Is it cigarettes? Is it marijuana? Is it a drug? Is it meat? What is the thing that is the lowest frequency right now? And you just need to ask yourself, what level do I want to play out in my life? And, if you start removing these things steadily by choosing the next lowest frequency thing that's playing out in your life, and you remove that, you start steadily going up the vibrational octaves. And of course, nutrition is a massive part of this equation. Eating more, organic, raw-based foods is going to raise your vibration massively. And then this is going to impact the level of thinking that you have, because processed foods have a lot of programming in them, have a lot of chemicals in them, which is creating, discordant thought patterns, which then creates negative behaviors. So it's all about, making the choices of what can be the highest choice I can make to make this evolution and make this jump. And really it's about being honest with oneself and taking a good, hard, honest audit of the lifestyle that you're leaving and choosing the lowest frequency behavior pattern and eliminating it. Stabilize that for a few weeks and then move on to the next one.
Thank you for that. Again, very inspiring, and it really shows us the work that we must do in this expansion of consciousness. These Christic principles, this unconditional love, really truly acting in this way, embodying these virtues. I guess as we learn to really step into that, into selfless service, that expands the consciousness and activates the DNA.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's very simple. You take a look at how smooth your life is, how effortlessly your life is coming towards you. Are
Hmm.
you embodying the visions and dreams that you have, or is there something at the moment that's kind of, you're not quite there? Is there something in the way? It's just about being honest. And of course, the ego always wants to be a little bit more advanced than often we really are. So, it's a tricky thing, the ego we must learn to navigate and overcome. So it's absolutely just being honest and, looking at these, how selfless am I? How much unconditional love do I hold to all people? Am I truly in service to all? Am I really giving over my life completely to spirit and following my guidance and following guidance that flows through me? Am I living in abundance? Being spiritual doesn't mean being broke. There's a lot of us who have had previous lives who have taken poverty consciousness vows. Well, one of the first things you're going to want to do is clean up the karma and the contracts associated with those vows, because they're no doubt capping your ability to attract, financial prosperity, which is absolutely important if you want to be of influence. You want to be a bigger influence in the world. Well, one of the ways that we can do that is, of course, to start generating more revenue and money, so we can start sharing that and start investing in bigger projects and start doing good with it. So it's a number of different ways and markers we can look at the quality of our life. And the question I always want to check in with people that we work with and myself is that, am I in more expansion and abundance, in terms of love and life and joy and finances and everything, than I was this time last year? So, is your life static, or is it expanding? So you always want to be checking in with yourself, that you're constantly evolving, constantly working on yourself. And the key area here is you make yourself like a little project where you're looking for this 1%. This 1% area in your life you can improve upon. Because if you find this one area that you can tweak and improve upon, it takes you into a completely different destination in just 1 year, because your whole frequency changes. So it's about going across these different levels of your experience and noticing when resistance comes up, noticing when anger comes up, or frustration or anxiety, and looking to reverse engineer these discordances or upsets and trying to find the root cause of what's really behind the experience of the resistance, the experience of the anger or the frustration. And that's where the juice is. The juice is in the shadows, not in the light. And this is where a trap I feel for light workers is that they get caught up in trying to go and keep, following the light and doing activations, and they quite often get caught in the false light matrix. The big secret to really advancing yourself lies in your shadows and your shadow consciousness, and trying to reverse engineer and take out some of these discordances and viruses and malware that's running your operating system, that's creating the discordances. So you want to find out where these discordances are. Look for where you have the resistances and the upsets, such as the anger, the frustration, the rage, any of these energetic or behavioral defects that jump out. There's a program behind that's made you go into anxiety, that's made you go into resistance, that's made you go into frustration or anger. And if you spend time looking into that, you can start to find the juice of the program behind it, and a wounding and a belief that's there. And then, we have codes that we've designed that can help you overcome and rewire that. So, there's amazing work out there, not just being done by us, but being done by many people who are bringing all sorts of technologies to overcome faulty beliefs, to overcome woundings and programs, to help you turn into a higher version of yourself.
Really, that's it then. Notice that which really upsets us, angers us, takes us out of this light, this alignment, and that is the work, and that is the shadow side. And even when we look at some of the things in our outer world that are upsetting us, come back to this center, realize and go down to the root, like you said. And really, it's almost like putting our foot down and demanding or commanding that we will not let this bother us, that we will be in unconditional love. So that's really the work, is to, even in the past, just to recognize it. I know when we're dealing with ancestral contracts or agreements and vows or imprinting, we might not be aware of it, but just to find the anger and to go to the root cause of that, that work alone is very significant and truly what must be done.
It's beautifully said, Lauren.
Okay, well, thank you. This is very comforting. I have a quick question, and we'll go on to your next story and wrap up our conversation. But what do you do now with ego? What is your relationship like with your own ego?
Well, very beautifully, I've got a wonderful, caring family around me who can give me reality checks if it gets it out of control. So my dear beloved Alea and, of course, Akasha, Ashera, and we've got a growing community around us. We've got a growing team who form part of our daily living, Gabriel, Cosmic, Katanara. So we've got beautiful beings, Tiara, who are constantly reflecting to one another. And what we do is that we point out to each other when an ego deficiency is playing out. So this is the beauty of, having very close-knit, community-based, loving family relationships. That you can be the mirror to each other. And so what happens is that we all evolve and grow together. And, of course, sometimes it's difficult because, I still go through things. Of course, it's part of the human experience. The work never ends, But then, with love and compassion, you support each other through it. And then you can have a laugh about it, a bit later because, we come up against our own challenges, our own ego deficiencies. And no matter what level you get to, there's still more. There's always more. It's never going to finish. It's just that, you become very committed to becoming the best version of yourself. And when you find something, well, we celebrate it now. Wow, I found a program. Wow, this is what it's about. I've been trying to work out what this is about. and you let it go. So, it's about still remaining humble and never thinking that you're complete. Because the truth is that you're never complete. Is that we're always evolving our consciousness. And as soon as you think you are, that's the ego playing out, and you can rest assured that there's something else underneath there that needs to be explored.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, very beautifully said. All right, we're going to end our conversation, and this might take you a few minutes to explain, but one of the ways that you expanded your consciousness into a deeper understanding was with plant medicine in ceremony, ayahuasca, and this was a very interesting experience as Earth has been given a seat at a high table, at a high council. So can you share with us your ayahuasca ceremony experiences and this new seat on the council?
Yeah, it's almost like two different conversations. So we'll talk about ayahuasca and how it can be for some people who choose to go down that path a useful tool for, breaking through your consciousness. And then we can talk about some of the things that are happening up in the star councils and how humanity has recently been given a seat for the first time on these on a newly forming council based around this Christic server. So ayahuasca, great topic. Obviously, this is a tradition that comes from South America. It is gaining a lot more exposure in the media these days. It's becoming more popular, and she's a plant intelligence, a complete a devic plant intelligence that has a consciousness field that's incarnated as a plant, and it's when ayahuasca merges with this other plant called chacruna that these MAO inhibitors are able to get accessed in the brain, and your brain can uptake and utilize something called DMT. DMT is only usually released in your brain the moment that you're born and the moment that you die. And what it does is it opens up a doorway in your field to allow your consciousness at birth, which is obviously stationed in higher dimensions, to come down and anchor itself in the physical vessel, and then at death to allow your consciousness to leave your physical body and go back into these other realms. So by taking plant medicines, especially ones that have high amounts of DMT, offers the opportunity for your consciousness to sort of leave your body and go off and explore other dimensions and other experiences and see your life from different perspectives. And of course, ayahuasca is a spiritual intelligence. So she has a incredible intelligence which is able to go into your system and begin reprogramming your DNA template in your bioenergy field. So, I mean, this is not everyone's path, absolutely, but for those people who are what we call, I guess, the psychedelic cosmonauts who enjoy exploring their consciousness, it is an incredible opportunity to explore your life in a different way. Now, in saying that, what is important isn't just the medicine; it's the context in which the medicine is taken. And this is the ritual and the ceremony which is led by a shaman. And of course, what's happening now is that in South America we have, I guess, what I might call ayahuasca tourism, where a lot of people who may not be as qualified as perhaps they need to be holding ceremonies, causing problems. So it's important that if you choose to go down this path, you're going with someone who has a lot of experience and is able to hold the frequency, because the consciousness of the shamanic facilitator does have a big sway on what goes on. And we are blessed in that we have a private camp in the Amazon jungle that we take groups to. And what I've noticed, and when I haven't been to other camps, we've just got our private one, which is a non-commercial camp. We take groups of 18 to 22 people for a 15-day dieta, which is 5 ceremonies over 15 days, where we have a very in-depth integrated program that includes meditation and yoga. It includes a lot of personal process by the facilitators that we have that go. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Akasha. I know Tiara's taken a group again this year. So we have this quite thorough training and programming and that we run through there to help people unlock their consciousness, do their clearings and activations and DNA. So in the right context, ayahuasca can be an incredible accelerant. It was for me, and after I came out of a lot of training in the energetic realms of scientific understanding with Dr. Barbara Brennan, I spent the next few years working with the shamanic facilitators in South America, working with ayahuasca. And she began teaching me direct many things about the healing arts, and literally began overriding a lot of the reptilian programming that was in my genetics. And through a lot of purging, through a lot of uncomfortable ceremonies, I'm not going to lie. I mean, ayahuasca, she's a real ass kicker. It's challenging and difficult. It's not going to be an easy journey, but it is a faster journey. It can rip through a lot of inorganic architecture. It can take out reptilian programming. She can show you past life experiences and how they're capping you in this lifetime. She can show you traumas that you've forgotten about in your hard drive. And it's a complete reprogramming. And one of the favorite things that I do each year is take groups to this camp in the Amazon, working with the, Divic intelligence of ayahuasca to fast track people's consciousness through the Amazon Avatar program that we run. I mean, it's our top transformation program, and is the absolute fast track. All of our grouping, myself, Akasha, we both came online through this camp we have, and through the program there, and through the facilitation we run. And most of our grouping have gone through there to basically get their psychic skills, their psychic abilities come online, because she can just purge through the density so quickly. So it is an accelerant. You do have to be mindful of the context in which you take it. You will want to research the shamanic facilitators you're with, and just tread carefully. But for some people, absolutely, it's an incredible path of exploring your consciousness and accelerating your life path.
Wow, pretty amazing.
The second part of your question, so what began happening is that over time we began, piercing through the veils, and I was able to start having direct contact with the star nations. And at the beginning, this was through ceremony, because we'd opened up the portal to have a more direct connection, like a hard line, and I was able to access ships. I was taken up on ships, and I noticed, my hologram was hooked up to these different technologies on various ships where they were testing how fast they could take someone's genetics and reprogram them. So there was a lot of interaction with star beings, and then what began happening is that I was able to start making contact with them outside of ceremonies, and so that was because the density had been purged through. Then inside ceremonies, we would get missions where we would be given instruction sets of what we could do to help support the planet and her ascension path. And these missions inside ceremonies added another depth of flavour to what would go on in a ceremony, because not only were we working on people's individual holograms, but we began doing more global and more galactic activations and work that would be working on reprogramming land, overriding AI intelligence, pulling apart the mainframe of AI that was hooked into the Vatican, hooked into London, hooked into Washington, overriding some of the AI software that was holding all that in place. So we would get a lot of different missions. I mean, some of them you can read about on my website, and then you can subscribe to a number of the Amazon diaries that I've had. I usually keep pretty good accounts of each ceremony, so you can subscribe to those Amazon diaries, and for many people, it's like reading a fantasy novel. It's quite incredible, the goings-on in these ceremonies when we're doing our global and galactic service missions, with some of the things that we are overriding to, I guess, overcome what we call the shadow consciousness beings, the suppressor beings, who have got sort of AI intelligences or artificial networks plugged into the earth, and we're going in on the medicine and journeying and working with the guardians and overwriting some of these that are happening. And so it becomes like quite a cosmic and galactic soup in the temple and the ceremonies when that's happening at the same time as people are going through their own journey and their own experiences. It's quite an experience for people who really enjoy it. And because of all these various things that we had been doing over the years, recently, the last trip that I went to, the work that we were doing on the Earth grids, what came back to us was that because we had recently anchored in the next root race for humanity, and this was actually done in a ceremony with a new medicine that Akasha has streamed down, which is a much higher intelligence medicine than ayahuasca, which has been lost for a number of centuries. He's re-alchemized it and brought it back, and we're just testing it now. When this template dropped down, we went across to the Amazon and went through the program there. And after one of the ceremonies, the messages came back from the Star Nations that because of this Homo Divinus template and this accelerated mutations that were happening, and because of the Christic server that's been going across all the multiverses and going across this time-space matrix, many new species who previously have not been had seats on the council tables are now being offered seats on the council tables, including humanity. And we were offered in that ceremony one seat on the table through to our grouping. And while that communication came to me, I didn't feel I was the best suited to take that role, and I've passed it on to Akasha, who has got the role as, I guess, the Earth ambassador on the Star Council, and currently he is being upgraded with these various technologies and frequencies so that he can interface in the council meetings. One of the things that's been happening is that he's been upgraded with a technology that through his telepathic communication can instantly translate the languages of the different species who have seats at the table now. And when he telepathically connects in English, that automatically translates it to their language, and when they communicate back, it takes their language and automatically translates it to English. So no doubt sometime this year, when he's finished his upgrades and the frequency adjustments needed to be able to hold the frequency for these meetings, he'll start and he'll represent our species of our evolving consciousness. And I'm sure that we'll be able to report back some of the goings-on that happens and some of the plans that we'll be having in motion to support the spiritual evolution of our species.
We can go on and talk for hours, so we will definitely have you back for another show, Christof. That whole part where you were taken to the ships in your experience there and your work with the star beings, that's a whole nother conversation. Perhaps we can pick that up there. I know many people have questions about that. So, wow, thank you so much.
we can talk about a number of the missions that we've done with the Guardians. We can have a whole session on talking about some of the things that we've done on the planet. It's like quite a science fiction story,
Yes.
but it's all true. So it's quite amazing.
Yes, and it's all real. So we look forward to hearing you describe this greater galactic community from your viewpoint in future conversations. Okay, very
Beautiful.
quickly, as we say goodbye, can you take just a brief moment and talk about your special offer with your videos to re-engineer our DNA?
Oh yes, that's right. I believe we still have the DNA protocol that's up there. I believe I on the call today touched upon the need for having your DNA activated to be able to have that frequency coming through of the higher dimensions, so that you can begin moving your consciousness up. So we have a protocol that does clearings on the auric field to remove any attachments, to remove astral objects and other various things littering your hologram. And we have another training that works on clearing karma that you've accumulated, which people tell us is quite a heavy session. They always give us the feedback that it's quite a wipes them out quite a bit. We have another training that rips out the inorganic material, which is locking down the DNA. And then we have 3 trainings which go through and systematically activate the various strands of DNA, utilizing the programming language of this time-space matrix, which is sound, vibration, and light in the form of these biogeometric type visual images, which Akasha bridges down from the higher harmonic realms. And so it's a protocol. It's one of our signature programs at the Institute of Divine Potential, and we get amazing feedback from people on how it's changing their life. It's accelerating them. It's not just the clearings and the activations; it's the actual knowledge that you'll get about how your hologram actually works and the reprogramming that takes place. And of course, you can keep coming back to it time and again. It's kind of like jump starting your battery. If your battery's flat, you have to run the battery a little bit so you can keep coming back to these frequencies and use them time and again. So, if there's a first step of anything that we're bringing through on the planet to accelerate humanity's consciousness, this would be the one that we recommend to get started with. It's a fast track to jumpstart your DNA template and to jumpstart your consciousness, and I'm sure it will serve you well if you choose to invest in yourself. You won't regret the results you'll achieve.
Thank you for being that new earth architect, really bringing forward these instructions, these mission instruction sets that you've been given, and sharing it to raise the consciousness of humanity. Really spectacular. Thank you so much for that, Christof. As we say goodbye, any last words you'd like to wrap up with?
Oh, thank you. Why not? We always, in our live events, I always have a round of closing statements and more intimate events. And so a closing statement, yes, what I'd like to share is that, it's about each of us taking personal responsibility for not only our life, but for our family and community. We're the ones we've been waiting for. Let's not, wait until any, so-called leaders in authority, to make decisions that we think are going to impact us. Let's just get on with things ourselves, band together, take our spiritual evolution seriously, and begin architecting the new world. It's time. It's time for us to step up and actually make the changes ourselves. Let's not wait for anyone else to do it. No one's going to magically appear out of the sky. We're here in this soup, in this dimension. We have to be the ones to recreate the world how we want it to be. And it's going to happen together. Together, we're going to achieve more as long as we keep working ourselves and keep raising our vibration, expanding our consciousness, operating with love, and all can change. And this year in particular, 2017, is a peak year for this, because we're coming at what we call a particle convergence, which has never happened before to our planet, where all the dimensions kind of blend together, and there's a 3-day window in August where we can pull in golden age timelines and anchor them into our planet's trajectory. So it's an incredibly powerful year to make massive shifts and massive changes. And together, with more of us holding the intentions of this golden age, we will pull this planet around, and it will happen with your committed efforts and all of us together. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste. We will pull this world together. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Christof Melchizedek.
We
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this program, please share it with your friends and loved ones. And we thank you for shining your magnificent light and adding it to the world. This is when we love ourselves like no one else can. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.